When my husband, Mark, passed away, the world turned gray. We'd spent 33 years building a quiet life together, one filled with laughter, small dreams, and the little blue house on Maple Street. At home was his masterpiece. Every brick, every fence post, every rose he planted in the front yard carried his touch. After he was gone, it wasn't just a house anymore, it was my last piece of him. When I moved back in after the funeral, I thought the neighborhood Homeowners Association, the Maple Grove HOA, would be welcoming. At first, there were a few handshakes, a few smiles, a welcome back, Mrs. Bennett. But then came the letters. The first one arrived just 2 weeks after I returned. Notice of violation. Mailbox color not HOA approved. I blinked, reading it twice. My mailbox, the same one that had been there for 15 years, was suddenly non-compliant. I ignored it, thinking it was a mistake. But then came another letter. Violation. Flower pots exceed size restrictions. Then another. Violation. Lawn edging, inconsistent with community standards. It felt like a joke until I saw the fines. $100, $200. $500. I called the HOA president. Linda Myers, a woman in her 50s, with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Linda, I said softly, these can't be real. My husband denies. She cut me off coldly. Mrs. Bennett, rules are rules. If everyone did what they wanted, this community would fall apart. Her tone wasn't just firm, it was cruel. Something about the way she said everyone made me feel small, like I didn't belong in the neighborhood my husband helped build. Then one afternoon, I came home from visiting my daughter to find a bright orange sticker plastered across my front door. Property in violation, court action pending. I stood there frozen. I couldn't breathe. They were taking me to court, over flower pots, over a mailbox. No, over control. I sat on the porch swing Mark built for me, clutching the letter, tears running down my face. That's when I saw it, the solar panels glinting on my roof. Mark's last project before he died, he'd installed them himself to cut our bills, saying, "The sun's free. Honey, might as well use it." And that's when I noticed the line in the complaint that made my stomach turn. Unapproved solar installations, subject to removal. That's when I knew it wasn't about flowers or paint. They wanted to erase every trace of him. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, surrounded by old photo albums and unpaid bills. I whispered to the empty chair beside me, "Mark, what am I supposed to do?" My hand brushed against something wedged in the back of the drawer. A dusty old folder, labeled Property Rights, Legal Notes. Inside were printouts, handwritten notes, even marked up sections of state law. Mark had always been meticulous, an engineer by trade and a planner by heart, and tucked at the very end was a single note in his handwriting. "If they ever come for this house, don't let them." I felt my heart catch fire. He'd seen this coming. He'd left me the map to fight back. The next morning, I marched into the HOA office. Linda was there, sipping coffee like a queen. "Oh, Mrs. Bennett," she said with mock sympathy. "You really should have hired a professional for those panels." I smiled. "Funny you mention that. I just did." That's when the door opened behind me, and walked attorney Daniel Cross. Tall, calm, briefcase in hand. He looked straight at Linda and said, "My client has endured months of harassment, unlawful fines, and emotional distress. This ends today." Linda scoffed. "You can't just barge into an HOA meeting." Daniel smirked. "Actually, I can. I requested the meeting in accordance with Section 8 of your own bylaws. The one you probably haven't read in years." He placed a folder on the table and began flipping through pages. "Let's start with the solar panels. State law explicitly protects homeowners from aesthetic-based restrictions on renewable energy installations. You've broken that law 3 times in the past 6 months." He looked at her board members. "That's not just negligence. That's actionable discrimination." Linda's voice trembled. "We were only enforcing standards." Daniel's tone stayed even. "Standards that don't exist in your recorded covenants. You fine my client for mailbox color, flower size, and rose placement, none of which are covered by your governing documents. You've essentially created laws out of thin air. The room fell dead silent. He leaned forward, voice lowering just enough to make the board members lean in. So here's what's going to happen. You'll remove every violation. You'll refund every fine. And you'll issue a formal written apology for emotional damages. Or we'll see you in court under civil harassment and discrimination statutes. Linda's face drained of color. You can't be serious. Daniel smiled faintly. Try me. The board murmured among themselves. The treasurer whispered something about liability insurance. The secretary looked near tears. Linda clenched her jaw, trying to hold power she no longer had. Finally, she said, "We'll review the matter." Daniel gathered his papers. "Good choice. You have 48 hours. As we walked out, I felt lighter than I had in years. Daniel looked at me and said softly, "He'd be proud of you, you know." I smiled, eyes misty. I think he already is. That night, for the first time since Mark's death, I slept without fear. 2 days later, I found a letter slid under my door. It wasn't from the HOA. It was from Linda. Her handwriting was shaky. "I lost my husband too. I let this position make me cruel. I'm sorry. Your home is beautiful. Your flowers are beautiful. He'd be proud." I cried for her, for all the years she must have spent hiding behind power to mask her pain. The following week, the HOA issued a public statement. At their next meeting, they withdrew every violation, refunded my fines, and officially amended their bylaws to protect homeowners from personal targeting and unfair enforcement. When I walked into that meeting, people stood and clapped. Even Linda smiled through tears. And that night, as the sun set behind the maple trees and the solar panels on my roof shimmered gold, I stood in the garden Mark planted roses in full bloom and whispered, "We did it." Now, when neighbors walk by, they see more than a house. They see a symbol, a quiet rebellion that turned into reform. Because in the end, it wasn't just about fighting an HOA. It was about fighting for love, memory, and dignity. They thought they could control me. But what they didn't know was that I had already learned from the strongest man I ever knew how to stand tall when the world tries to bend you. And when my lawyer showed up, I didn't just win my case. I won my life. Back